My name's Jack. I was 17 the night I walked out of my parents' house for the last time. They said I was making a huge mistake, that the world would chew me up, that I'd come back begging within a month. But that's not what happened. What happened is that I left and never looked back. I wasn't the son they wanted. I didn't get straight A's. I didn't want to follow their perfect plan of going to college, marrying a sweet girl from the neighborhood, getting a 9 to 5, and living 2 streets down from them forever. What I did love was working with my hands, fixing things, building stuff. That was the first time I felt like I was good at something. But my parents didn't see it that way. Every time I mentioned trade school or construction, my mom would look at me like I'd told her I wanted to join a traveling circus. My dad acted like I was wasting every ounce of potential he believed he had passed on. To them, my interests were beneath our family name. I got into both the state university and a trade program that offered a partial scholarship. I wanted to tell them I was choosing the trade route, shorter, more affordable, more aligned with who I really was. Bad move. When I brought it up at dinner, my dad slammed his fork down like I'd insulted his entire bloodline. My mom burst into tears. Actual tears. Like I confessed to something criminal. Then came the yelling. My dad called me ungrateful. Said I was throwing away everything they'd sacrificed for her. When I tried to explain why it mattered to me, he cut me off with a line I'll never forget. No son of mine is going to waste his life with a tool belt. And then he said it. If you're too stupid to see the opportunity you're throwing away, maybe you're not the son we thought you were. That broke something. I went upstairs, grabbed the emergency bag I'd packed weeks earlier. Yeah, I had a feeling this day would come, and filled it with clothes, my laptop, the $1,200 I'd saved, and every important document I owned. When I came back down, they just stared at me, like they couldn't believe I was really leaving. My mom muttered something about how I'd come crawling back, and my dad didn't say a word, just slammed the door behind me. I stood outside, rain falling, staring at the house I'd grown up in. And I didn't cry. Because somewhere deep down, I knew they never really saw me for who I was. I called my best friend Caleb. His parents had always treated me like a second son. They let me crash on their couch, no questions asked. But nothing about the next few weeks was easy. I was still in high school, trying to graduate while juggling 2 part-time jobs and figuring out how to survive. Some nights I skipped dinner. Some mornings I went to class after sleeping 3 hours. But the one thing that kept me going? Anger. I wasn't going to prove them right by crawling back. I was going to prove, if only to myself, that I didn't need their version of love to make it out. The first few months away from home weren't heroic. They were humiliating. I was broke, tired, hungry, and constantly trying to act like I had it together. Caleb's family was kind, but I couldn't stay forever. I felt like a burden every time I opened their fridge or sat at their dinner table. So after 2 weeks, I packed up my things again, this time without a backup plan. I bounced around for a while, couch to couch. Sometimes I slept in my car with the backseat folded down, using my hoodie as a pillow. Other times, I'd get a cheap motel for the night if I could pick up an extra shift and scrape together $40. I took every job I could find. Warehouse temp work, lifting pallets for a furniture delivery crew, cleaning out garages with a junk removal team that paid under the table. No job was beneath me. Because when you have nothing, you stop caring about pride. You care about survival. The one thing I refused to give up was school. I showed up every day, exhausted, unshowered some mornings, wearing the same clothes more times than I'd like to admit. But I was there. Because that diploma? It was the middle finger I needed to raise to everyone who thought I'd crash and burn. A couple teachers started noticing. One of them, Miss Parker, my history teacher, pulled me aside after class one day. "You okay?" she asked. I lied. Said I was just tired from work. But she saw through it. She called the guidance counselor. They connected me with a program that helped homeless students get free meals and transportation support. I didn't even know that existed. For the first time since leaving home, I felt like I could breathe without borrowing someone else's air. I graduated. Not with honors. Not with fanfare. But I walked across that stage with my name called and my head up. Caleb and his parents were in the crowd cheering. Loudest ones in the gym. My parents? They didn't show. Not that I expected them to. The next step was trade school. It wasn't fancy. Just a modest program at a technical college an hour away. But I was all in. I worked weekends and nights pouring concrete, digging trenches, cleaning up job sites. The kind of work that leaves your hands raw and your back sore. But I loved it. Because every splinter was mine. Every paycheck had my name on it. And no one could take that from me. One evening, I got a call. It was my dad. First time in almost a year. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. He said, "Your mom misses you." I didn't know what to say. I just listened. Then he added, "We thought you'd be home by now." I said the only thing I could say truthfully. I did too. Trade school was the first place I truly felt like I belonged. No one there cared what kind of car you drove, or if you wore designer clothes, or if your parents were funding your life. They cared if you showed up on time, if you knew how to swing a hammer, if you could keep your head down and get the job done. I loved that. I loved the clarity of it. There was no pretending in that world. Either you worked, or you didn't. And I worked. Hard. I spent every hour outside of class on job sites, mostly hauling materials and doing cleanup. Not glamorous work, but steady, honest. And over time, I started getting noticed. Foremen asked me to come back. Electricians taught me tricks off the clock. One guy, Tony, ran a small remodeling crew and said, "Kid, you've got hustle. When you graduate, I've got a spot for you." I held on to that promise like a lifeline. Because by then, I was living in a basement unit the size of a storage locker, no windows, barely enough space to stand in the shower. But it was mine, paid for with my own hands. That felt better than any comfort my parents ever tried to control me with. I finished trade school and took that job with Tony. The hours were long, and the learning curve was brutal. But I soaked it all in framing, drywall, electrical basics, plumbing runs. Within a year, I wasn't just cleaning up jobs, I was running them. We worked all over the state, remodeling kitchens, flipping old houses, fixing up cabins deep in the woods. And every day, I became more than I was the day before. Then one day, Tony sat me down, said he was moving on, starting a different venture, asked if I'd want to take over the crew, not just as a lead, as the owner. He was willing to sell me the business, name, equipment, truck, everything for a fraction of what it was worth. Because, as he put it, you've got the fire. And I'd rather it stay in the hands of someone who earned it. I was stunned, took out a small business loan, signed every form with shaking hands. And just like that, I owned something. Something that could never be taken from me by silence, guilt, or control. I got the business license printed and framed it on the wall of my tiny apartment. No fancy frame, just wood and glass from the local thrift store. But I stared at it like it was a trophy. Because it was. Not for success, but for survival. Then, one afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. It was my mom. "Your father isn't well. He keeps asking about you. Will you come?" I stared at that message for a long time. Then I closed it and went back to work. Because I wasn't ready yet. I held off for a week before replying to my mom's message. Not out of spite, but because I had to ask myself the hard question. Was I going because I missed them? Or was I going because I finally didn't need anything from them? I chose the second one. When I pulled up in front of the old house, it looked smaller than I remembered. Funny how that works, how places that once loomed over you shrink when you grow past the version of yourself they tried to contain. I didn't knock. I walked in. My mom was in the kitchen. She looked up, startled, like she wasn't sure I was real. "Jack?" she whispered. I nodded. "Hey." She didn't rush me, didn't cry, just stared like she was trying to line up the boy she remembered with the man standing in front of her. My dad was in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, looking thinner than I remembered. Older. He'd always seemed 10 feet tall when I was growing up. Now he looked tired. He turned toward me. Didn't smile, but his eyes shifted. "You came," he said. I didn't sit. "I'm not here to argue," I told him. "And I'm not here to fix anything." He nodded slowly. "I didn't ask you to." Another silence. Then he said something I never expected to hear. "You were right." I waited. He continued. "I thought I was protecting you. Thought you needed to be pushed. But I see now. I just didn't know how to support someone who wasn't me." He didn't apologize. But for the first time, I didn't need him to. Because I saw him. Not the monster I remembered from that night. Just a flawed man who never learned how to love someone different than himself. And in that moment, I realized something big. I wasn't there to forgive him. I was there to free myself from the weight of his expectations. We talked a little. Small stuff. The business. The weather. My old dog who'd passed while I was away. Then I stood up. "I've got to get back," I said. He nodded. "Take care of yourself, son." I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Because closure doesn't always mean rebuilding something. Sometimes it means walking away and not needing to check if they're watching. After that day at my parents' house, I felt lighter. Not happier. Not completely healed. Just unburdened. like I'd been carrying a weight that was never mine to begin with, and I'd finally set it down. I stopped replaying old arguments in my head. Stopped wondering if I should have said more or said it differently. That version of me was gone. And for the first time, I could finally see the man I was becoming, not just the one I was trying to prove existed. The business started growing fast. Word of mouth spread. I treated my crew fairly, paid them on time, talked to clients with respect and transparency. No shortcuts, no lies, just honest work. And it paid off. Jobs got bigger. I bought a second truck, hired 2 more full-timers, started getting recognized by other contractors who once ignored me like I didn't belong. I remember one guy, twice my age, walking up to me at a supply store. "You're Jack, right? Heard about your remodel over on Briar Hill." I nodded. He smiled. "Damn fine job, son. Clean work." That meant more to me than any degree or framed diploma ever could. Because it was real. Earned. Some nights, I drive past my old high school. The building hadn't changed, but everything else had. The kid who used to sit in the back of the classroom wondering if he'd ever make it out? He made it. He built a life from rock bottom, with no roadmap, no backup, and no cheering section. Then came something unexpected. A girl named Lauren. She ran a local coffee shop. I met her while renovating the space next door. At first, it was just small talk, morning hellos, borrowed outlets, shared complaints about parking. But then it turned into something more. She started leaving me extra pastries at the end of the day. I started staying longer just to talk. She never asked about my past. Never pried. She just listened when I wanted to share and stayed quiet when I didn't. That was new for me, and I liked it. We started dating. Simple things. Dinner on her back porch. Coffee before work. No games. No power struggles. Just 2 people who'd been through enough to know what they didn't want. And that made space for something better. Not flashy, but solid. Years later, I stood in front of the first house I ever bought with my own money. Not some fixer-upper. Not a rental. A real home. Warm lights, a workshop out back, a yard big enough for lazy Sunday mornings and loud summer barbecues. And I smiled. Not because I'd made it, but because I knew exactly what it took to get there. Every sleepless night. Every cheap motel. Every time I swallowed my pride instead of asking for help I knew would come with conditions. All of it led to this. And I wouldn't trade a second of it. My parents never fully changed. They softened a little. My dad sends birthday texts now. My mom still acts like I went through a rebellious phase, not a war for my own identity. But I don't need them to understand me anymore. Because I understand myself. I built something they said I couldn't. Not just a business. Not just a life. But a version of me that doesn't rely on their validation. That doesn't flinch when people doubt me. That doesn't need to win arguments to feel whole. Lauren and I eventually bought a second property together, a little cabin near the mountains. We go there when the world gets loud. No service. No pressure. Just quiet mornings, good coffee, and the kind of peace I used to think was only meant for other people. I get messages sometimes. From old classmates. Old friends. Even a cousin I haven't spoken to since I left home. They say things like, "Man, I always knew you had it in you. You're an inspiration, dude. Wish I had the guts to do what you did." And all I can think is, you do. You always did. You just have to be willing to let go of who they told you to be, so you can finally become who you already are. I didn't get the picture-perfect ending. I got something better. Freedom. And if you ask me, that's the most beautiful thing you can build with your bare hands.